Hey everyone, I'm back here with part 2. Just looking at the time there, I only got about a 15-minute time limit, so about the time it hits about 10:26 I have to end this, maybe go into part 3. But now I continue on with part 2 here, where I talk about Ian Flynn. And I quote, "Now as far as Ian Flynn goes, many long-time and short-time fans have a difference of opinion on his writing. Now apparently at the Fans United for SatAM forum, or message board, which is FUS for short, some members have argued over the fact that either what Ian Flynn has done in the comics is either good, or recently in the comics, is either a good thing or a bad thing. Now some users or members have stated that both the SegaSonic and Sonic SatAM fans don't like the direction that the comics is going. So in other words, that means those that just want to see the game elements and the game characters in the comic, and those that like the comic because it's sort of like an extension of SatAM, you know, they don't, both sides basically agree that they don't like the direction the comic is going, but for different reasons. For example, one fan doesn't trust what Ian Flynn is going to do next, even though they don't know what he's got planned for the future. Yet the distrust that this fan, or this fan, has or have for Ian Flynn is due to him and the editor-in-chief of the comic saying that going towards the 250th anniversary issue, that for the freedom fighters and their friends, that going towards the anniversary issue, it'll all be a downward spiral for the characters, and for this particular fan, and this particular fan I'm talking about is known as Laser X Spy, and many others, if not some others like him, this causes concern for what Ian Flynn has in store for the characters. So in other words, Laser X Spy and several others, you know, really don't trust what Flynn's got planned now. They don't trust where he's going with this. As a matter of fact, this distrust this fan, Laser X5, on the FUS forums, the Fans United for SatAM, and even another fan at YouTube, this fan being Jonathan83X, has for Ian Flynn, I guess you could say went up a few notches when in the final panel of issue 232, which is the more recent issue, the main villain, Dr. Eggman, was last seen in the final panel of the main story, taking a blowtorch to the now mechanized Sally. In other words, he had a blowtorch in front of her face. Now, by seeing this, of course, these two fans and others like them, the distrust they already have for Ian Flynn, or towards Ian Flynn, would most definitely increase, because they feel he's hurting the character even more, or in some cases, showing his true feelings in hatred towards the character. However, some fans have tried to, and this is true, I guess you could say, reason with these fans by saying things could be worse. By using examples of fan fiction stories that have been downright unbearable and embarrassing, even going as far as using one erotic fan fiction story, title and description included, that's in parentheses here, that I put that, the title and description is put in parentheses, that featured the character Mina Mongoose in her nightly getting it on encounters with several of the male Sonic characters. Now, by using these fan fiction story titles as examples, they are pretty much trying to tell these fans, like Laser X5, Jonathan83X, and a few others, that they should be thankful they have an actual fan as the head writer, and not somebody or someone's that write the garbage, as they put it, that they just saw and read. So in other words, what they're saying is that even though Ian Flynn may do things that don't make sense, and at times may write some bad stories, just be thankful he's not somebody that does the garbage we just read through these fan fiction and erotic fan fiction stories. Now continuing on, and I quote, "Now I agree that this is a good point, and as I have said before, I myself have no vendetta against Ian Flynn," and you can check out my video where I did that, where I talked about that. "But I will admit, and this is true, I will admit I do not like what he did to Sally. However, I am like those fans that are in the middle, and just waiting to see where he goes with the story from here." So in other words, I'm one of those fans that's in the middle. Whether it's a SegaSonic fan that's in the middle, or a Sonic SatAM fan, or an overall Sonic fan like I am. I'm just one of those fans in the middle that's like, okay, we may not like what he's done, but let's see where he goes from here. And the way I deal with it, and I've mentioned this before, and many people feel it's stupid, I actually don't open the issues. And anytime I see maybe a fan art drawing of Mecha Sally, I either click the X button and close it out on my DeviantArt page, and I just look at a fan art of her in her true design, in the design, in original character design that we know her from, like SatAM and from before the whole Genesis deal and stuff. But now I continue, Now I agree this is a good point. And I said before, basically what I'm agreeing to with the good point is, things could be worse. We could have worse writers than Ian Flynn, you know what I'm saying? Not saying Ian Flynn is a bad writer, but I'm just saying, you get what I'm saying. When you read this in the description box, hopefully, or click on the link I'm going to provide, or whatever, you'll get a better understanding. I know, I'm going cuckoo here right now. But continuing on, I say this, and I quote, "Now I agree that this is a good point, and as I have said before, I myself have no vendetta against Ian Flynn." I know I'm repeating myself here, so I apologize. "But I will admit I do not like what he did to Sally. However, I'm like those fans that are in the middle and are just waiting to see where he goes with the story from here." Now, continuing on. What's funny about this, though, is that several fans who go on Ian Flynn's message board, which is Bumble King, have said, and I don't know if this is true or not, and what I put in between true or not in parentheses is, however, with new head writers, they always want to outdo the previous writers. But it seems that according to some, Ian Flynn wants to make a story arc that's bigger, not just an issues link, but bigger in story arc overall. And something that the day he does step down as the head writer will be remembered for many years to come. As a matter of fact, according to some of those visitors to his message board, which is Bumble King, this story arc that apparently will conclude in the 250th anniversary issue is supposed to be bigger, and I guess he's hoping for it to be more memorable than the Endgame miniseries / story arc, which concluded in the 50th anniversary issue, I should say. So basically, right there, basically according to some people that go to his message board, basically Ian Flynn, from what they have reported, wants to try to make this current story arc bigger and more memorable than Ken Penders' Endgame story arc. Now I continue on. Now I must admit that this is a very high goal to try to achieve, even for Ian Flynn. But like many fans out there, if not several fans, whether they like the direction the comics go in or not, I have to agree that trying to outdo the classic miniseries / story arc that is Endgame might be, and possibly is, impossible to do. Because let's face it, Endgame is Endgame. I mean, you can't. No one has really ever tried to attempt to touch that. Excuse me for a second. Gotta shut this bird up for a second. There we go. Now I continue on. However, the unexpected and impossible have been achieved before in the past when it comes to comic books. And some of these epic story arcs that companies like Marvel and DC Comics have done for several of the franchise characters have either succeeded or bombed and failed. I mean, sure, there may have been a head writer or writers on, let's say, X-Men or X-Men related stories, or comics I should say, that tried to make a story arc, an epic story arc, that they would hope outdo and be more remembered than the Phoenix Saga, but perhaps in the end didn't achieve that goal because they realized nothing can touch the overall Phoenix Saga. In other words, let's say somebody wanted to do a bigger story arc issue and whatever wise that would be more memorable, be more remembered than the Phoenix Saga, and then realize, whoops, we can't do that. Doesn't work. Can't outdo that. Now, continuing on, which is why many fans, many/several fans like myself, feel it may be impossible for Ian Flynn to achieve that goal. As a matter of fact, several fans feel that Ian Flynn should not attempt to write epic story arcs, and that just writing 4-part story arcs, like what he does sometimes in the Sonic Universe comic, is a better direction for him to go in. As a matter of fact, there is one fan by the name of Tross at the Saturday Morning Sonic forums that feels the same way. Continuing on, the one problem which has been consistent with Ian Flynn in the eyes of many is that some of the things he does in the stories doesn't make any sense. For example, in 230, in my eyes, issue 230, in the eyes of several others, he more or less made Sonic look like an idiot. The reason being is that at the end of 229, he, Sonic, restored the timeline to normal, thus saving Sally from being killed, only to turn around in 230 and have Sally get turned into a robot, thus making our main hero look like an idiot and a fool because he apparently restored the timeline to save Sally, and in the end it was all for naught. Another example would be more recently in 232, where for some odd reason he had Nagas use his magic to restore Bunny Rabbit, or Bunny Rabbit to cool it, not just a half-robotic state, but to full flesh and blood. Now there are those that like what Ian Flynn did here, just like they liked Sally's sacrifice in 230. However, on the other side of the plane, there are those that don't like it either way. For they feel that the way Bunny was restored to flesh and blood was nothing more than a cop-out. But then again, there are those that see it otherwise and feel it was not a cop-out. Or feel it is not a cop-out. Then of course, there's the robotic Sally situation. As I mentioned above, there are those that don't like the fact that in the final panel of the most recent issue and its main story, you have Eggman holding a blowtorch towards the face of the now robotic and mechanized Sally. And I will continue this on and finish it up in part 3.